doing treatments. Now, I got to tell you, as an old oncology nurse, the things that we're doing now are absolutely spectacular, phenomenal, and it's great. And if it's my son, by gosh, I'm going to ask for every possible treatment too. But what has happened is sometimes the treatments can become difficult, and we really have to ask, where are we in this process? Because it's harder to define, have we come to the natural end of life or not? So we really need to focus on this statement, which is, it's the duty of a physician to prolong life, but it is not his duty to prolong dying. And sometimes that's the question we need to ask. Are we prolonging living as you define it, or are we prolonging the dying process? We also have to figure out, if we're offering a treatment in advanced disease, who are we palliating? Who are we trying to comfort? Because it's tough on us as professionals, because we don't like to feel helpless, and it may ameliorate our own feelings of helplessness by being able to say, here's one more treatment, like the oncologist I just spoke about who wanted to treat that woman the day before she died. So are we just helping them feel better? Are we helping us feel better? What's really the goal here? So here's an oncologist, and he said, I even raised with her the possibility that an experimental therapy could work against both her cancers, which was sheer fantasy. Discussing a fantasy was easier, less emotional, less explosive, less prone to misunderstanding than discussing what was happening before my eyes. And that's tough. I know some palliative care physicians who are just fabulous, and they said, we have to tell you, it's so much easier to spend 5 minutes writing an order for another treatment or intervention that I know is not going to help than it is to sit down and spend an hour with a family or a patient that are grieving or angry or upset. That's the reality. This survey came out through Medscape earlier this year, and this is 25 different specialties, but it really gives us a heads up into why we need to take responsibility for ourselves for asking the questions. Because here's it, would you ever recommend or give life-sustaining therapy if they judge was futile? Over 50% said yes. Yes, or it depends. Would you ever prescribe a treatment that's a placebo simply because the patient wanted treatment? Again, look at the statistics. Would you hide information from a patient about a terminal or pre-terminal diagnosis in an effort to bolster their spirit or attitude? Less, but there's still something there. Again, this is not to bash anybody, because we in healthcare are just as human as everybody else, and this can be a very uncomfortable topic for us, and we may feel that we have to continue to offer you hope. So what I always let people know is it's okay to ask the questions. It's not just your right, it's your responsibility. We talk about autonomy and self-determination, but if you don't have the information, then you're not really making an autonomous decision. And so you have to hold our toes to the fire to make sure you have the best information possible on which to base whatever decision you choose to make. And advancing illness, it becomes much more complicated also, because sometimes the choices are difficult and which one creates the least harm. I was taping a young woman a couple of weeks ago, and her father, I think, said it very clearly when he said, I feel like we're in a sinking ship in shark-infested waters, and we're trying to figure out whether to jump onto the log or not. It is not an easy thing to do emotionally, physically. You simply make the best possible decision you can. So part of what we need to look at is treatment something we're doing for you, or is it something we're doing to you? Again, looking at your own quality of life and what the goal is and how it's going to impact that goal. Now, Atul Gawande had written in the article, I think beginning of this year, Letting Go, a beautiful article in the New York Times, and he said, I don't think, a way of reframing it was to say, I don't think we should continue with the cancer treatment. It's time to stop focusing on just the cancer and spend more of our effort focusing on the rest of you. Sometimes you got to stop the battle and just take care of the soldier. And it's not easy. It's not easy for the patient. It's not easy for the family. It's not easy for the physician, the nurses, and anyone who's grown attached to you. It's simply not going to be easy. It's going to create a lot of trauma and drama, within any of those factions. But for us as healers, we have to be able to be present in the midst of that. It's a helpless feeling to know I don't have anything else to offer regarding treatment, but my presence really is phenomenally important in healing. And how can I just be present and be a guide and support now for the next part of this person's journey? And it's understanding the difference between the truth and the hope, which kind of I talked about earlier. And it's redirecting your energy, because by knowing the truth, if in fact you want it, not everybody does, that gives you the chance to prepare. Prepare for your death. Get the hospice in. Prepare your legacy. What films, what pictures, what recordings do I want to leave? How do I get closure with friends and family? What legal paperwork do I need to do? If we don't announce that we're dealing with the last leg of your journey, this important work may go undone. We also need to recognize that illness is a very dynamic and transformative process for both patient and family. So it says, I've seen it before, he's changing into a butterfly. What's true is until we're there, we don't really know what we're going to say and do. Now, I had a very good friend of mine as a nurse, and she was acting funny at work one day, and they sent her down to the emergency room, and they found a lymphoma in the front of her brain. Now, this particular kind of cancer, there was no chance of cure. If she was lucky, she could have about 2 years, but it was going to be challenging treatment. But usually people died much sooner than that. She was a caregiver for her 83-year-old husband who had advanced Parkinson's. He understood, and he really liked the idea of simply bringing her home and keeping her comfortable. But the kids said, no, we just got married. We really want Mom around. So that was their choice. She died about 4 months later. But I took this time to tell my own family, if this happens to me, don't touch me. At that point, I wasn't insured anyway, and I said, I just want to be comfortable, bring me home, get me hospice. And that's how I feel in the moment. But what's also true is that if my oldest son just came up to me and said, you know, Mom, you're going to be a grandma, I might change my mind. I might say, yeah, give me some treatment. I want to see if I can be around here while this little one is born. So until we're there, we don't necessarily know. So don't make any assumptions that somebody wants to continue to fight or that they want to stop treatment. It depends where they are in their life, how they're feeling, how they perceive quality of life at that point, and what their goals are. And for me, this is the focus. Life is not measured by the number of breaths you take, but by the number of moments that take your breath away. Again, this is your own definition of quality of life. Also to understand that just because somebody dies doesn't mean somebody failed. The physician didn't fail because he couldn't pull a miracle out of the pocket. The family didn't fail because they weren't providing the best organic-only foods. The patient did not fail because they weren't doing their affirmations every day. At some point, we're all going to die, and it doesn't mean somebody failed. So sometimes it's not giving up treatment. It's simply letting go to say, this is where I am now. How I've defined the good fight may change. It may be your definition of the good fight is I'm going to have every single treatment no matter what until the last breath, because even if it doesn't help me, it might pay it forward for somebody else. And that's your option. But it might also be you get to the point where you say, okay, enough already. I don't want to go to the clinic 3 days a week. I'm going to sit on my patio. I'm going to toast the sunset with my margarita in one hand and my liquid morphine in the other. I'm going to have my friends come over and tell me how wonderful I am. So everyone's definition of the good fight may in fact start to change. This is Funky Winkerbean when his wife came back with advanced metastatic breast cancer. And he goes, maybe there's another drug we could try. And she goes, no, I'm tired of puking my brains out. My body can't take the abuse anymore. He said, but you've always been a fighter. He said, but this is a new fight. I want to live the time I have left, not just be alive. So again, this is the decision that only the person who's facing it can go through. And it's going to be difficult on family because it's never a good time for somebody we love to die. So how do you navigate this? It is a roller coaster, absolutely. Keep talking. Identify what are the biggest fears, what are the drivers of making whatever decisions that you're going to be doing. Understand the natural progression of the illness and the limitations and benefits of potential treatment, like I said with the gentleman earlier with esophageal cancer. Talk out the emotional aspects. You know, how are we honoring somebody? Are they saying, Mom, I want you to get treated because you're the only parent we've got left? That's about letting go, and it can be a little bit selfish for families versus saying, boy, Mom, I love you. I really want the best quality of life and best comfort that you can. So we really need to talk out our fears, our angers, our guilt, and everything before we really come to any kind of decision. Now, we do know that having a discussion about end of life is a good thing. This actually came out a couple of years ago from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which showed that people are not more depressed after having discussion. Actually, they're relieved and their mood increases because they let the elephant out of the closet. There is less aggressive use of intervention, and improved quality of life for those facing death, 7 times less likely to use actually an intensive care unit and getting on ventilators or dialysis machines. We absolutely know that cancer patients live longer and more comfortably under hospice care, and that there's an improved quality of life and quality of death for patients, and that really impacts the bereavement of the caregivers after the death. So there's only benefit to be had by allowing that discussion to happen earlier, again, as long as the patient and or family choose that. And they may not be in the same place at the same time, so we have to give them each the opportunity to take this journey in their own way with their own timing. But I love this as a synopsis. This is from Hannah's gift, and this is Lessons from a Life Fully Lived. This is a young girl who died, and this is her mother speaking. And she said, while death is inevitable, knowing you're loved is not. When I saw Hannah's radiant face in the center of that circle, I realized that healing can happen even without a cure. No matter when Hannah died, she would die knowing that her life mattered, that she was completely loved. I couldn't imagine a more profound healing than that. So let me talk just a little bit. This is a whole nother talk, but we're only going to shorten this, really talking about some of the dying process, because when we understand the wisdom of the body, it really makes a difference in how we choose to make decisions when we're dealing with advancing illness. So for me as an old hospice nurse, responding to the how am I going to die, tell me what to expect was really incredibly important, because as I talked about the dying process, depending on their particular illness, and most importantly, how we're going to manage the changes, the relief was phenomenal. So for me, the bottom line is from this Nietzsche quote. He said, there's more wisdom in your body than your deepest philosophy. Your body knows how to take care of you and to shut down. So just like it has to go through certain stages to be born, it's got to go through certain stages to shut down and to die. What we look at are what are the natural and normal changes that a body is going to go through that we don't want to interfere with lest we inadvertently create more discomfort. And that's often around food and nutrition. And what are the symptoms that, if they arise, absolutely need to be managed, like pain, shortness of breath, constipation. What you need to know, too, is that death does not mean pain. There are plenty of folks, even with a variety of cancers, that never have one whit of pain at the time of dying. So it all depends on what that cancer is or what that particular illness is. But know that get into a hospice program and that we can manage that and keep you with a good quality of life.